What is wrong with JoJo? A lot of people asking the question. JoJo Pion not looking like himself in week one. The biggest fraud or frauds of week one, J&T and I will go over that. Is Fudge the best top in North America? Maybe a little bit early to ask the question, but we will dive into that as well. And did the real MVP of week one get snubbed? I, of course, have my opinion. Here's a hint it's one of the 2-0 teams. Episode 111 of the Clown Fiesta podcast with Blue Jay and JNT 250. JNT, what did you think of week one?
It was good. Like nothing was too wild, nothing was too, sad or somber. It was a good week 1.
Honestly, let's just get into the broadcast stuff. Let's start right there because for me, I don't know. I guess I don't know about you, but for me, huge sigh of relief. Like, because the last couple of weeks, or maybe even last couple of months, we were really worried. We didn't know what the LCS was going to look like. Dash isn't there anymore. Freak isn't there anymore. And we thought viewership might be way down because of the schedule change. But overall, I thought the viewership was pretty good. And by no means is week one like, oh, viewership's okay for week one. That means it's going to be okay for the rest of the split. No, of course not. But we did dodge that, like seeing 20K, 30K. Like I saw Twitch peak somewhere around 100K, which I think is pretty normal for the LCS. So not so bad.
Yeah, and I think another thing you got to consider when talking about the viewership numbers is with the co-streaming program changes, allowing more creators to be involved in that. That might be, a number that you're not directly seeing on the stream, but there could be some extra viewers in there because while all the major ones are still going, like I Will Dominate, LS, Sneaky, Meteos, there are other ones, including Dash himself. He was doing co-streams during the game. I
Yeah.
don't recall how many viewers he had, but I have been like seeing him stream on Twitch, and normally he's not really hitting more than 200 viewers. So I would assume that the co-streams probably gave a little bit of a boost to that, but
Yeah.
all the viewers count basically when viewership has been declining in a region for the last 4 years.
Yeah, and we kind of hypothesized that the LCS was going to, or just esports in general, are going to go more towards co-streaming as time goes on. It seems like that was one of the biggest reasons why they got rid of Dash. But I guess I'll ask the question to you. Was it weird to you at all that it kind of felt the same just without Dash? Like it didn't feel like there was less time in between games, which was something that we had talked about previously. We thought, well, maybe if there's no dash, maybe it's because the time in between games is much shorter and they're trying to get the games going a lot quicker. But that didn't really seem to be the case, did it?
Yeah, I know. I mean, they did have some special extra segments that I think they were just probably only doing for week 1 purposes. Those were primarily happening on the first day with QTCinderella being a guest on the broadcast. But in terms of in between games and the analyst desk and the various discussions that they were having, it did feel to me a little weird that there was no dash, and it was more just you could see somebody else sort of took on the dash role for any given post game discussion or conversation. Primarily it was either like Emily Rand or Raz who was kind of like leading the
Mm-hmm.
little mini discussions that they were having, and it only felt a little awkward because they were a bit awkward doing it, and that's not a surprise when you have a person like Dash who's literally been doing like the entire hosting job of the LCS since season 5. I'm pretty sure was when he first came on the desk. If you pick that up for the first time ever in like a large capacity role like Rand or Emily Rand or Raz was doing, it's going to be a bit weird, but I feel like they'll sort of work out the dynamic not too much time. Like it felt pretty normal, less
Yeah,
dash.
I'm so like stuck here because my first instinct was like you couldn't have just done all this with Dash, but also at the same time, I thought the broadcast was great. Like the idea of just sitting at the analyst desk in between every single game gets stale. It has gotten stale over the years, but I felt like they had segments to do in between all the different games that were unique and just different. Even if some of the stuff was stuff that they brought back, like this or that, for example, or Fudge putting the pictures of the different top laners on his head or what, like that is not the same old boring thing in between every single game. So like very promising signs if you ask me. Like I'm actually not so damn bored in between games. So that was really good. And the other thing too is just getting the players involved. That was a lesson they definitely learned from last year. People were saying get the players on the broadcast way more often, like Whippo for example, like Fudge. Like that is something that clearly they took that lesson last year and ran with it this year, and I hope we see a little bit more of that.
Yeah, that was something that they sort of started doing a bit in summer 2022 was instead of interviewing a player on stage, they would bring them on the broadcast for sort of their analyst desk segment. That's also when they were sort of having some of the players, after they finished their game, cast the next game. And,
Hmm.
we saw a little bit of that this weekend when Whippo, while he's not playing, he was definitely on the broadcast and did some casting himself, which everybody I thought it was really, really good. I think a lot of people can appreciate that sort of inside info that, current pros or former pros are going to have, especially those, very small nuanced things that you might not necessarily pick up on during the game as you're watching it as the average viewer. So definitely agree with you when you say getting the players involved in any form, whether that is, bringing them on the analyst desk to, actually talk about the game, what's going on, doing some sort of, fun analysis, like Fudge doing, the ranking everybody from 1 to 5 fudges, or just
Hmm.
the completely random for fun segment that they have with, QT Cinderella and Spica doing the cupcake
Yeah.
decorating, which, I think people seem to have, harsh opinions as sort of one way or the other when it came to Cutie Cinderella. I know a lot of comments on Reddit and Twitter were like, this was stupid. Like, what's even the point of this? But there was the complete opposite side where people were like, this is so much fun. Like, it's so much better than just an interview that we've seen every single week on a recurring basis.
I thought it was great. I
I
thought it
thought it was great
was,
too. It was just
yeah.
fun. It was just it was a good way to enjoy the break in between the LCS games, because that's
And
always the most painful part for me of watching the LCS broadcast is just the waiting in between.
yeah, and I'm gonna steal a take from Travis Gafford here because I think he makes a really good point. He said, and I'm paraphrasing. Last week he said something along the lines of like, "I wish that LCS fans were far more open to having the non like player personalities on camera." And he brought up how rough it was last year when they had Lily and Michael do the player draw for MSI or whatever it was. Like those are the kinds of people that are going to bring in new viewers. And not only that, they're just good personalities on camera. Like they're great, they are just naturals. And I would even say Bwipo, considering he's no longer a player technically, is still a natural with all that knowledge that he brings to the game. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about the broadcast. It makes me feel a lot more. Uh, I'm lost for words here, but it just makes me feel a lot more, I guess, comfortable with how the broadcast is going to go for the rest of the year. Um, I guess one other thing we have to shout out was Rafa. I thought he did a great job. Were you able to listen to his because I know you mainly a co-stream watcher. Were you able to listen to the Rafa cast?
Yeah, I did go back and watch the first game that he casted on Thursday, which was
Mhm.
the fourth game.
Yeah.
It was after the TL FlyQuest game. I don't remember. I think it was the CLG Dig game, and then he casted the last one as well. But I thought it was pretty good. I think I agreed with a few of the some of the comments that I saw on Reddit and
Criticisms?
Twitter talking. Yeah, the criticisms were, it did seem like he was a bit nervous, but
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
caught that in
gonna.
between games. I definitely caught some nervousness, but
Yeah,
nobody's gonna fault him for that, of course, right?
and you shouldn't. People are,
Right.
but you should not. This is his first ever cast. It's obviously something that he's probably been dreaming of. I know they had a whole little segment right at the beginning where he was like, "This is what I was wanting to do, was be here right there in this moment." Like, he's just gonna get better and better and better. Like,
Yeah. There's
who
never
you can't really name a caster that just burst onto the scene and just became everybody's favorite, except for maybe Captain Flowers.
Yeah.
And even, but the thing is, even him, people don't remember how early on he was in the LCS, and they only remember sort of like season 7, season. He started in season 6 summer. That was
Yeah.
his first. I think his first time on the LCS was either season 6 summer or right at the beginning of season 7, and he did sort of become NA's favorite caster by like season 8. But even then, nobody just jumped on his bandwagon right away.
I promise you, there was also some Captain Flowers haters. Just knowing the LCS and like LCS fans, we know by now what are we, season 13 of League of Legends? We know by now that no matter how good someone is at their job, there will be a hater for them. Um, and honestly, for his first time casting, I think the community sentiment for the most part is just really happy for him and thinks he did a good job. And for his first cast, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Um, Anything else that you wanted to? Oh, one thing I actually thought I forgot to bring up was um, with the players getting so involved. So I don't know if you noticed, but all the teams with like on their Twitter and their socials, was it just me or like was there so many players involved? Right?
In terms of what, just tweeting
In
and stuff
terms of
after their
like all the
games.
no, I mean like all the FlyQuest guys were in that Avali video. They were all like there were so many of them that was just part of the regular LCS hype video. Like they're all part of the Golden Guardians had all their players doing the funny FU thing. Like
Mhm. Well,
a
I
lot of the content, it seems to me anyways, that the players are finally getting it, that if they don't want this league to die, they have to be involved in helping it grow and be as cringe as it may be sometimes. And don't get me wrong, there's going to be a lot of cringe. They recognize that for the product not to die, you have to make it interesting. You have to have people care about you, show up on camera and say things to the fans, even if it is some wacky ass shit like Spica hitting the triangle in that video, like crap like that. I think was so good, and I think that players are going to continue to be involved, and I think, yeah, I don't know. I just think they did a really good job of that.
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with you that keeping the content, keeping a steady flow of content, whether that is pre-season, during the season, or after the season, it's always important for players to be involved in stuff like that. And, it definitely was good to see. But at the same time, I would also argue, sure, there are more players and whatnot appearing in this content, but is it the players themselves who are actually probably pushing this, or is it, team owners and
Oh, team owners
managers
for
and stuff
sure.
like that? I mean, just I'm not implying anything, but by the way you phrased it, you made it sound like, oh, players are so happy to be in content now. It's like, no,
No,
it's realistically probably upper management being like, you guys got to get in, you guys got to be in this content, like
no, I
in
think we're
your
on the same
contract
page.
bullshit or something.
No, see, that's the only thing that I disagree with is I don't think it's in their contract. I don't think you can do that. I mean, maybe you can. I don't know, but my point
You
being is,
probably
I think
can.
for years they've been telling players that they have to be more involved, and they just kind of always say no. Like that's something that we've heard from people all the time is that getting the players to do it is impossible. And it seems like they finally understand that it's time for me to get involved in some of the content. And the last thing that I'll say is the this or that thing that they've done on YouTube for years, right? It was always Kobe and Jet, and Captain Flowers did it for a bit, and Freak, and so on and so forth. I think that is the perfect opportunity to get the players that don't talk enough or that are more timid. Like sometimes you'll see some post game interviews, and I don't know, for some reason I'm singling out Fake God. I remember a
It's
post game
literally
interview
exactly what I was thinking because
where
I knew that you were gonna say that.
that's so funny that you knew I was going there. But like you see players like that that don't know what to say. I think that this or that segment is a perfect time to bring them on because maybe they don't have to scramble for answers in their head. They're just on the screen in front of them. They pick one or the other. That would be a perfect opportunity to get those types of players involved, and on the broadcast. But uh, that's my one little criticism. For the most part, it was so damn good. I thought, yeah. Anyways, I can't say enough good stuff. I way more promising than it was going into the season. A big sigh of relief.
Yeah, I guess for myself, it'll be interesting to see if the in between game sort of schedule or sort of changes that they seemingly attempted to do in week one, seeing if those continue throughout the entire season. Because
Yeah,
if I know anything, the Riot Games special is introduce something that's new and fantastic that everybody likes and everybody thinks is interesting, but then keeping it extremely vanilla or just copy and pasting what they've done from previously into the current thing and not innovating and just then giving up on it at the end. Be like, okay, we're just gonna go back to the old shit.
that's totally fair. And from the looks of things, it doesn't look like QTCinderella is going to be on any future broadcast. At least not at the moment.
Yeah, I
She
mean,
kind of hinted that it was a one time thing. I don't know if she exactly said that. I'm paraphrasing, but it doesn't seem like we're gonna get her for week two. And so
well,
since she was such a big part of week one or day one, you kind of got to wonder what they got to follow up in week two.
yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be even every week, but just doing something to keep the non-gameplay aspect of the broadcast interesting on a week-to-week basis is very important because,
Hmm.
once again, I'll be completely honest. I couldn't give two shits about what happens in between the games. But when they do fun and interesting things that is not the norm, like pretty much everything they did this past weekend is stuff that I also found interesting. It was like, oh, let me keep
Yeah.
watching this. But unfortunately, if it just goes back to the same game ends, 3-minute break, interview, 3-minute break, analyst desk, 3-minute break, I'm not going to watch.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So let's get into the teams. Before we do, I need to remind people to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment. We need you to help tell YouTube that they need to recommend our content to other people. And for those that are new to the channel, we do weekly episodes, and you can find them on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any of the Anchor supported platforms. So just look up the Clown Fiesta podcast, and you will find us because there is not two of those. So yeah. Okay, JNT, where are we starting with the teams?
Well, we got all these 2-0 teams on screen now. We're going to lead it off with TSM because I think going into the season, a lot of people thought that TSM was actually going to be the worst team in the league. If you did catch our last episode, Cubby sort of dropped us a little bit of inside info with his TSM ranking, saying that TSM, well, he thought that TSM was the 10th ranked team. He basically said that everybody that he talks to also believes that TSM is the 10th place team. And while the both of us, I think I had him at 8 and you had him at 9, you might have had them at
Mhm.
8 as well.
No, I had him
Um,
at 9.
okay, well, either way, I think the both of us had a smidgen more faith in TSM than the majority of people did. But at the same time, they got the 2-0, but they didn't really get the 2-0, did they?
They they did. But this is where okay, at the start of the episode I said who's the biggest fraud? TSM. TSM is the biggest fraud and it's not close to me. This team is not as good as the other 2-0 teams that you're seeing on the screen right now. Right?
Mm,
TSM, FlyQuest, C9, CLG, who stands out like a sore thumb? TSM. They were losing both games. One of those games being to Immortals, by the way, who we clearly don't think very highly of. Um, Maybe there's some positive things we could start with though, because you can't go 2-0 with being completely trash. So I
yeah,
guess I will have to say that I'll start with Maple, the Azir game. I don't remember who that was against, but his Azir game, I remember him putting out a
that
bunch of
was
damage.
against
Do you
Team
remember we
Liquid.
played?
That was Team
Yeah.
Liquid.
So that good thing there. We saw Solo do what Solo does. He plays a tank in the top lane and just waits and scales. He did that especially on the Ornn. So like some good signs out of them. Chime, I think Chime was the one playing Ashe, had some good Ashe arrows, some good stuff. Um, but some not so great stuff too. Like their bot lane was kind of getting clapped in their lanes.
Yeah, their I mean, they should have lost that game against TL purely through the bot lane.
Yeah.
I was honestly a bit surprised when Yon and Core JJ just basically didn't take the game over. Like, they were, what, I think they were 3-0, like, at the beginning of the game, not at the beginning of the game, but
They had 2 kills by 5 minutes, by
yeah,
like 5.5 minutes or
yeah,
something.
but I think it was by like the 3.5 minute mark. By I think it was the second Drake fight that TSM took. Team Liquid just did nothing with their absolutely like bombastic bot lane lead. Like I was like, there's
Mhm.
no fucking way that TSM has any chance in this game. They're just gonna get rolled by Lucianami. How are they gonna How are they gonna deal damage to a Lucian who's long as hell range with the Nami when they have melee 80 carry champions in Graves, Callista, and Ashe? Like the only way you're ever gonna kill this guy is by some miracle Azure sweep or by some miracle Ashe arrow or something like that that doesn't get McHale's, but TL just literally did nothing with their lead, and it was honestly just the classic TSM game where we don't do anything, our opponents don't do anything, we're gonna outscale and win the game.
That is a classic,
It's yeah, I
except
mean,
you don't really expect them to continue to pick up the wins when they do that. Like,
yeah, I
how
mean,
is this still how is this
it's
still
it's
working?
still working.
But you
And
know what though?
and
It
that's
made
hold
more
on, hold on, but
sense.
that's part of the reason why I had TSM over teams like Golden Guardians and Immortals because TSM, a lot of these players on their team, they're not going to win you a game, but they're not going to lose you the game, and we'll get to some other teams later. I mean, we saw one of those teams against TSM, Immortals. Immortals has players that will lose you the game.
Yeah. The thing is, the do nothing and wait and slowly win made more sense when they had players like Spica and Broken Blade, like guys that I had confidence would win late game even if they did nothing in the early game. Whereas like looking at TSM's lineup, I don't know how they ended up winning these games in the late game. The only guy that I could say I have like a lot of confidence in is Solo because he's so used to just getting shit on in laning phase. Lose lane win game is like a Solo kind of thing, but like the rest of the squad, I don't really see it. Maybe I'm overlooking things. I don't know. Just doesn't seem like we obviously know this TSM lineup this year is not the same as TSM lineups in the past. So I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know how it's still working.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really that surprising to me that TSM, I expected them to be 1-1, mostly because they were going up against Immortals in their first game, but picking up a win against Team Liquid is definitely something that nobody really expected, and I think that is just purely because of the rosters on paper, and we sort of saw that at the beginning of that game, which is, again, I'll go back to it, my first point, I was just so surprised with TL's just lack of proactivity at all during that game. I think they just expected after they got those early kills bot lane, they just expected to roll the game over versus like
Yeah.
actually actively doing things to roll the game over. They, I guess, never mind. I was gonna get to
We'll
Team
get
Liquid
into a
for
deeper dive of
yeah,
TL later.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
no
yeah.
fear of shortage of things to say on TL. We'll get to them in a little bit. Next up, we had FlyQuest. FlyQuest to me is hands down the best looking team this weekend. Agree or disagree, JNT 250?
Really? I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that they were the hands down best looking team, so I guess I would have to disagree.
So you're gonna say C9 was, or
I don't think either of them were insanely better than the other.
okay? What were your thoughts on FlyQuest then, or did you want me to start?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, the main reason why I thought FlyQuest looked better than I maybe thought they would, and not to say that I thought they'd be bad or anything, but Impact was a complete monster in
Yep.
that first Team Liquid game, playing the Jax versus Gangplank matchup. I know Jax's, I think his win rate in NA after week one is like pretty atrocious. I don't think he's actually won a single game that he's been picked. I'll double check that stat in a second here, but I thought Impact had a really fantastic game on the Gangplank. It's one of his, better carry champions. I know we don't necessarily look at Impact as a big carry player, but two of his sort of premier carry quote unquote picks are kind of like Gangplank and Mordekaiser. So to see him pop up on the Gangplank was really cool. Obviously, the game against Team Liquid was literally scale up and make it the Prince show, which is what it was. This was a pretty familiar style to the LCK, which I don't think that a lot of people were surprised about, considering Team Liquid and FlyQuest. So it literally was just an LCK game, and Prince was the better carry, and so was Impact.
So I completely agree with everything you're saying, and this was the roster where I think this player got snubbed for Player of the Week. Do you want to guess who I'm going with, JNT?
Prince, I guess.
Absolutely. I think both games he was going so like hella aggro, whether it was Zeri or Ezreal. And I just sometimes AD carries kind of just get fed kills on a platter, like they just served up for you. No, man. I mean, maybe some of them were, but a lot of them were him doing the work, using Ezreal E in and picking up the
he
kill and landing
literally
everything.
he was
Uh,
playing with his dick out on Ezreal. Like he was eing in at every available opportunity.
Dude, he was absolutely taking over. And by the way, no shade at Fudge, who got Player of the Week. I just thought this was hands down the most 1v9 performance in both games that we saw the whole weekend. I thought he was definitely the best player, and so he had one death, and it was because they fountain dove to give him the pentakill, and they couldn't get it right.
Yeah.
Like he was 9-0-2 in both games, and it was with him picking up these kills. I was so impressed. So I mean, yes, it's 1 week, so I'm trying to not get too crazy, but holy shit, did he live up to the hype? Definitely the MVP. And you mentioned Impact. I thought he was probably the second guy in line as far as the putting on the carry pants. He did have a great week. And nothing against the other three FlyQuest players. It's not like they were terrible. They just didn't stand out to me like those two guys did. And I think the biggest reason for the 2-0 is Impact and Prince.
Yeah, big agree. I guess the only I wouldn't even call it criticism, but I would say one of the reasons why I think slightly put C9's week one performance over FlyQuest's is FlyQuest pretty much just scaled. I mean, against Team Liquid, and I mean obviously they're playing such lesser competition against Dignitas, but I guess I just weighted sort of Cloud9's early game and proactivity and stuff higher than FlyQuest's scale up in late game because I mean, I think I've said this a million times. If you want to win in North America, the easiest and most likely path to do that is to scale and win the game. It's you have good individual players, you pick scaling champions, you just don't get run over in lane, and then primarily, if you're the better scaling team, you're just naturally going to win games. So I don't know. I think it always is a little bit more impressive to me when you do see maybe a more aggressive team who is winning just as much as a scaling team. I think I just slightly weight that a little bit higher.
So
But
you're saying they take over the game early and they don't let go, and that's more impressive to you? Is that just
yeah,
a
hmm
gotcha? Okay.
it's always it's really hard to compare the two teams. It'll get a bit easier next week as they play each other, and we'll pick our winners of that a bit later on. But it's week one. Like I can't definitively say one team is extremely better than the other, but I will admit
Yeah.
I would rate Cloud9's week one performance slightly over FlyQuest's.
Interesting. Yeah, so I guess on that note, let's just switch over to C9. The one area that I'm not completely sold on yet is Diplex, which I think is totally warranted, right? Rookie player. There's still a lot of question marks about what this guy's supposed to be. To me, there was just, and maybe you could help me with which game this was. There was the one game where he continuously needed to ask for help from the jungler
Yeah,
and
but
support
that was
to
when his
fix his
wave
wave.
got absolutely fucked. Like
No, but that's a skill though, is being able to not get your wave. Like that's wave management is a big part
yeah, but it
of any
was
lane for that matter.
they were kind of explaining it on the co-streams when the game was actually going on, but it was like sort of a situation where he was in the midst of like pushing out his wave, and they were going for a top lane 2v2, so they called for Diplex to come, and then he was like mid pushing the wave and didn't get to finish pushing, and then Young froze it right in his face, and then basically I don't know. I would say that Cloud9 just did a bad job of breaking the freeze, where they just lazily were committing two people to try to break the freeze, which I think first was Diplex and Blabber. They tried to run in as the both of them. You can't run up to an Aurelia who is level 6 to a level 5 jungler and a level 6 mid laner with a full wave to stack Qs. And then Blabber left, and then support came, and then tried it again, sort of. And then that
Yeah,
didn't
they
really
had
work.
3 of
And
them.
then they brought all three of them at the same time. So honestly, if I really had to put any blame on that, I would actually put it on the two teammates who just didn't rock up together to push the wave out. That's
And
just
even if that's the case, so I want to defend him a little bit more because sometimes you won't see on live stream why the wave got messed up. Like sometimes because the camera's panning all over the place, right? So there could be other factors that we may not see necessarily on screen. So there's that as well. But I would even argue that if it's not completely on Diplex, I still think that's a weakness of the team
yeah.
not being able to
I
help manage waves. So
I
that
think
was a weakness that I saw in Cloud9 that I didn't see in FlyQuest.
yeah. So I agree. I would say I would put that more on the team than I would say than an individual player. I
Yeah.
agree with what you said.
And
Also,
and we can
correction.
also acknowledge.
Someday did win a game on Jax. That was where he started like to take over at the end of that
Mm,
EG versus Golden Guardians game.
yeah, and I think we could also acknowledge that even that is being a little bit nitpicky because there wasn't really many things to be upset about with either C9 or FlyQuest, but that was just the one thing that kind of stood out to me because having to call Blabber to your lane, like we know what Blabber can do when he's left on his own. Like he will impact side lanes for sure or take an objective. He's very, very aggressive. And so when you're taking him out of his I'm going to make plays rhythm and he has to come and fix your wave, that's kind of like a deterrent for me. So that's why I'm so focused on that thing, even if it's maybe not the biggest deal.
Yeah.
Um, I guess we should talk about Fudge as well. Did get player of the week. Let's be honest. I don't want to hear he was playing an OP champ. I like you. We can acknowledge that he was playing an OP champ, but we could also acknowledge that he freaking performed on it, right?
Yeah.
I don't like. I say this all the time, but I hate that. Oh well, he was just playing a super OP champ, so it's like I'm not that impressed. Like no, come on. Like he's absolutely taking over games. You got to give credit there. Anyone can ban it. I will never stop saying that on this podcast. He had a great weekend.
Yeah. I mean, you'll don't don't get me wrong. At least he's playing an OP champion, but like Golden Guardians, you can ban this champion. 100 Thieves, you can ban this champion. You cannot. Like I don't know. Like one
Were they
thing.
first picking it? Like could those teams have picked it even?
No, I think they first picked it in the 100T series, or
Mm,
no, they might have went. I don't know. They might have went Ash first pick in that series. I don't recall, but I want to say it happened. It was in the 100 Thieves series where they first picked it. But
yeah.
I don't know. Like this Jax versus Cassante thing obviously stemmed from the East because I think that's a really popular matchup in the LCK. But no offense
Yeah.
to all the pros in NA, but you guys do not have the equivalent hands of an LCK player, and I think we kind of saw that dynamic at Worlds 2022 where you are taking a large risk putting top laners in skill matchups these days. And unfortunately for both 100 Thieves and Golden Guardians, they paid for it because Fudge won the skill matchup. I mean, in Eastern regions, I think the Eastern regions would probably say that it's slightly Jax favored, but with the not as proficient hands over in the North American region, I would just like to hypothesize and say that that's Kazante favored.
It's so funny to me because you mentioned how we saw what happened at Worlds 2022. Okay, but this has been happening for much longer than just like since Worlds, where like North America will try to play the stuff that we see played in LCK or LPL.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, even though we see North America never like, there's a reason why NHAce is a meme. Even though we see North American top laners fail at taking the counter matchup and really doing enough with it, I still don't want to just give in and just say, well, we can't do it, so we'll never try. Like, eventually you got to keep trying and trying to, like, how are you going to compete with these teams if you don't try? If you just accept that you're just always going to get counterpicked and you just accept that you're not as good as the other regions, like, you do need to try to play these champions.
No,
So I don't mind them taking the Jacks, but it is funny that, like, We just see it time and time again. It's like, yeah, you just pick the tank, and in North America, you're probably going to win if you have the Ornn, or in this case, the Cassante, who's busted, and so on and so forth.
And I definitely agree, but I think that's also some of the onus, or blame. I guess I would say onus being both blame and recognition is to those individual players who have confidence to pick that skill matchup, or if they aren't as comfortable and feel that they need to default to some sort of a tank. And with Cassante being a new champion in that, I think it's not necessarily something that I want to just like destroy these other top laners for saying, "Oh my god, you think you can beat Cassante, you fool." It's like people are like, with this champion came out what, 3 months ago. Like, it's still going to take a little while for everyone to understand like the full nuances of the champion, how the
Yep.
lane works, how it team fights, whatever. I know I didn't listen to the co-streams for this game specifically, but I think it was one of the games that Whippo was casting, and he was referencing, I could sort of hear it in the background, but he was talking about Cho'Gath versus Cassante because he
Yeah.
played it on stream, and I was actually watching him stream that night before LCS,
Mm.
and he played that matchup on stream and literally was just like destroying this random Cassante. I mean, it
Do you
was like,
remember? Oh, so
it
you
was,
don't know who he
I
was
mean,
playing
but
against?
it was like a challenger MMR solo queue game, so presumably the top
Okay.
laner he's playing against. But he was just saying like, last night he found out that Cho'Gath is a pretty good champion into Cassante because you can just destroy him in lane, and I was like, okay, well, that'll be interesting to see now over the coming weeks if we see a champ like Cho'Gath come into the meta because Cassante is taking over and he can be a champion to beat that. And if we see that, that's when you have to credit those players who are willing to whip out those picks on stage. So if we see Tenacity next week, pick a Cho'Gath into Cassante and roll him over, like, that's big props to Tenacity. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, he got shit on in the C9 game.
And the thing is, too, in that game, it was just by one auto. Like, I- maybe I'm not being completely fair, but like, it felt like that one auto where they 1v1 and he dies. It felt like the game just swung completely in Cloud9's favor because of that. Like, they end up getting Rift Herald with the pressure that he got. They got more plates, and it felt like the game sort of snowballed off this 1v1 that was really, really close. And while I'm not doing the full game justice because there were other factors in that game, it just kind of felt a little bit bad for Tenacity. Um, but anyways, interesting game nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on C9, or should we go CLG now?
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing that I would say is, while I think FUDGE probably deservedly won MVP just for his, for his performance, Blabber was also really good in the
Yeah,
last
he had
week.
a good week.
That was prime regular season spring split Blabber we just saw right there, just
Which, as a
rolling over
C9 fan,
everybody.
I'm guessing you're pretty happy to see that, right? That's
Well,
one of
I
the
mean,
best signs is
I
seeing
guess
Blabber as
every
himself,
every,
right?
every single spring split he's just rolling kids, and he's doing it. So all things are a go.
So it hadn't even crossed your mind. You knew what you were getting before the season even started.
Well, it was just good to see that the norm stayed the norm.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's do CLG now. Shall I start with the good or the bad?
Let's start with the bad. Feeling a bit naughty right now.
I think the same problem that we saw in summer. You know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Like, Dokla's dying a little bit too much, man. And the thing is, I don't want to hammer this home every week, but I don't know how to not talk about it when he's dying far more often than he should be. So, like, what am I supposed to say? He's just overextending and dying. That's the same old story. And I really do think that
Yep.
if they have a solid top laner, if Dokla plays like the way he did at the start of summer, this team can be really, really good. They talked about the wiggle room. That's been the meme of like how far CLG can wiggle. Some people are saying they could wiggle up to third, some people fourth, and whatever, and wiggle all the way down to seventh. After this week one, I feel like a lot of people have them wiggling in between fourth and fifth place. But with a solid top, I could totally see that third place wiggle.
Well, I'm going to pat myself on the back here because our power rankings included, and also every other power ranking that I saw had CLG at 7th or below, pretty much.
Uh-huh.
And I put them 6th. And
This is the part, yeah, wow.
And
this
I,
is where JT pats himself on the back for putting them
of course,
sixth.
I did. Also,
Nice.
because I knew this team was going to be better than Dignitas, and we're gonna throw Dig a little bone here. They didn't have their full roster. We didn't actually mention this with FlyQuest either, but they didn't have Ayla. They had Winsome, but in the grand scheme of things, that didn't really matter. Prince was just destroying everybody. But for Dignitas' case, they didn't have their bot lane that they're supposed to. But once again, I don't really know if that mattered too much. But back over to CLG. I don't think I was in the category of people that thought that they could push higher than maybe even fourth or fifth. I mean, we always sort of go back to this top five versus bottom five thing in the LCS, and it does feel like CLG is that one team who can potentially break the cycle this year. We saw that a little bit last year as well. CLG, while they did sort of get, I think their highest they got was third in the standings towards the end of the season. Ultimately, they did finish, I believe, sixth um, post playoffs. But if there is one of these bottom teams to sort of push up into that top five, if we want to call it that already, it's definitely CLG. And I did put a lot of value in their keeping the entire roster from 2022 to 2023. I think
Hmm.
regardless of what team you are, keeping multiple players from a year prior is always going to help your early season performance, just with continuity and familiarity and whatever. So
Yep.
expect CLG to probably continue to be a pretty decent team. The most important thing that'll be important to look at CLG moving forward is, are they making those improvements on a weekly basis? And improvement number one, we already found it. It's been known for about a year now. Doko's got to stop dying in side lanes.
Yeah. That's the only real like standout negative thing, or that was like really really standout. I'm sure there was some other smaller things that I'm just looking over. The big standout in the positive light is contracts, and we've said countless times, we're not the only ones to say that like this team lives and dies by contracts, because we've seen contracts do really really well and we've seen them really run it down. And the best sign if you're a CLG fan is seeing what contracts did this weekend. One of the more impressive plays to me was he invades against Santorin, against Dignitas. He anticipates that Santorin has to come to this quadrant of the jungle, hides in a brush, chunks out Santorin. Now Santorin can no longer fight. He's down to like 30 or 40% HP. I don't remember exactly. And you can clearly tell Contracts makes the call that, hey, their jungler can't come. I see you guys got a wave stacked up bot. Let's dive bot. And they start to snowball that game. To me, that was Contracts getting the ball rolling, which we've seen plenty of times. That's one of the best signs for CLG, is Contracts being proactive, knowing what's going to happen, and making the play.
Yes, contracts beast.
Yeah. Now, the other thing I'll say as well is I thought Palafox had a really good game against EG, but I do have to say that like he kind of got snowballed when JoJo gave him the 850 gold. So like
Yeah.
just a little side note there, but his Casio really started dishing out some damage in the later game fights, and so there's also got to be some credit there.
Yeah, especially that play where he flashed over the sort of blue buff on blue side, the blue buff wall between blue buff and Baron. He like flash
Hmm.
alt W'd that wall and had three people in the miasma and basically forced all of EG's carries off of the fight, preventing EG's backline from hitting the front line, and CLG's backline was hitting EG's front line for free, and that basically won them that entire Baron fight. So credit Palafox on that team fight. He was the reason they
Yeah.
won.
Last thing I got on CLG is we can definitely. You mentioned how like them bringing in the same roster, you expect to see them have some synergy. We absolutely saw that in the one play where Dokla baits out Santorin and Armut to go on him. Right, they see Santorin standing on the ward. They call for the Ash arrow from the base. That play was sweet, by the way. That's the kind of stuff that you expect to see out of a team that's been playing together. Clearly, they show that they have synergy brought in and they have good comms, and they could just make it what is a really nice play. It was a smart play, not incredible from a mechanics perspective, but from just a communication perspective, very very well played, and that was nice to see. So another plus in the column for CLG.
All right, we'll move on to our 1-1 teams. We got our preseason favorites and one of the top teams in the LCS of all of 2020, Evil Geniuses, and the I don't know. I was gonna give 100 Thieves like a title or something, but I just couldn't think of one in the moment. 100 Thieves are also 1-1.
Yeah,
The
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 thieves.
the goat crew or whatever. I don't know.
Oh man, we'll have to work on that. Okay, let's start with EG. We asked the question, what's wrong with JoJo? Are you starting or am I starting with this one?
He's doklaying it a bit. I don't know. Like
I think it's as simple as he is just not respecting when he can die, or respecting when the other team could be in that brush, for example. He is dying in lane from pushing up without vision. He's dying in side lanes from pushing up without vision. He's dying while just walking into the jungle by clearing vision. Like these are very much um
they're rookie mistakes that he's making, and mistakes
so
that we
that's a
saw
perfect
him make as a rookie.
you com- you're on the exact same page as me. This is very reminiscent of what we saw at the start of spring last year. And so, while I can acknowledge his landing phase has been great, because he is getting CS leads. This is exactly what we saw last year. And I don't know whether to be like, well, it's fine because we know as the split went on last year that he got so much better, or if I should be disappointed that it's like we've gone a full year, but he's come full circle and he feels like a fresh rookie again. I don't know whether to be like this is okay or this is not okay. But the biggest problem is he's just not respecting his enemy anywhere. Just map awareness is really poor about where they could be and how they could kill him.
Yeah, I mean, especially in that CLG game, the play where he gets kind of caught out near the Grug pit and gives Palafox like almost 1,000 gold. That was
Yeah,
definitely
850 gold.
that was
Yeah.
like a big turning point in that game
And
because
he died more times than that too. He was the reason they lost that game.
yeah, but that specifically, I mean, Rise sort of functions similarly to Cassiopeia. You want to scale, get your items because your items mean damage. And
Hmm.
we kind of saw from that point in the game onward, Palafox really take control of that game, and I think just that one play in particular really just swung the game. And that was, if you want to point, if you want to point to moments that are game losing mistakes, that's one of them.
Yeah. And so with the thing that I brought up about it's okay because we know as last year he got better, or is this like a bad thing that like well he's back where he was a year ago? What lens are you looking at it through?
Probably the, I guess, disappointment that he's still making rookie mistakes. I mean, if we want to compare it, I mean, not if we want to, but if you compare it to like regular sports, when you have rookies on any team, you expect going into their first year that they're going to make some relatively
Hmm.
simple mistakes, ones that can be corrected, ones that can be learned, and can learn from and get better because of those mistakes. However, once you're a veteran in the league, and yes, even though this is his second year, he's a veteran in this league at this point. He has played 2 seasons in LCS, went to MSI, and went to Worlds. It's not like he's just a player who played in the LCS on a bottom tier team. He was a top player in the LCS that went to MSI, Worlds, and he's still making these simple mistakes that you will rarely see from other top pros in any given region. And I guess considering all of that, that's why it's a problem.
Yeah, I admit that I am in the it's a problem camp, but I will be very quick to forgive if he gets to what he did last year
I,
because obviously,
I think
right?
so as well, but
Yeah.
easier said than done, I guess.
Yeah. Another guy to point out, Inspired is still freaking amazing. I think it was their first game, but I could be wrong. The one game he invades a completely empty jungle, but I think this is calculated. What I mean by that is he sees that his bot wave is stacking up for a dive. If he invades and there's no camps there, I think he's communicating with probably Vulcan just because they have that synergy from last year, but maybe FBI as well. That I'm going to invade this quadrant. If there's camps here, I'll take them, and you guys have shove, so you can back me up anyways. If there's no camps here, I know they're jungler's topside, and you guys have a built-up wave, and we're going to dive bot. So to me, that was just like it's a win-win play, and that was just really smart out of Inspired. Even in one of the maybe it was an analyst desk segment, I don't remember, but Vulcan pointed out that he even micromanaged them on the one play, telling Vulcan to shoot his arrow at I think it was Stixay when he's charging up his Varus Q. Like it was just like I won't go too deep into what the play was, but basically Vulcan hit the Ash arrow and he was giving credit to Inspired for calling for the Ash arrow to do that. And I'm like, how is this guy jungling, uh, trying to track the enemy jungler, but also telling his laners when to use their abilities? Like that is just like, what the hell is going on, man? How is he doing all this? I can't say enough good things about JoJo or excuse me, Inspired. I still think he's the best jungler in the league. Kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see what other junglers will enter or re-enter the conversation, but it's Blabber and Inspired right now. It's only week 1, but just the level of play from Inspired was even in a poor week, we want to call it, them going 1-1 and not looking the greatest. Inspired still looked really good.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. 100 Thieves now. Where should we start with 100 Thieves? I think a lot of people want to get into the Azir support stuff. Should we
Yeah, I
start there?
guess we can start with that. I thought the co-streams said it well. Actually, no, it was LS's video. Actually, it was
Mm,
LS. I mean, it was the clips from the co-stream, but it was like a 10-minute video of watching the C9 versus Hunter T game, and I think he boiled it down pretty well. With the
okay.
way that they drafted, basically banning the top 3 ADs right now in Zeri, Lucian, and Sivir, they basically forced the opponents into the Ashheimer and then got Azir for themselves because they believe that Azir support is good into Ashheimer. And so I completely agree with that. and I think that's somewhat accurate just based on the logic following it. Obviously, he's the more intelligent person about League than I am, so I will sort of defer to him a little bit here. But that makes a lot of sense, and while that is good, on the reverse, they altered their entire draft for this one specific scenario, which was to win bot lane, and all they really did was go up 10 CS. I mean,
Yeah.
and it seemed to be that they had nothing else beyond that. It was like, okay, we're going to do this entire thing, warp the entire game and the entire draft to win bot lane and win through bot lane. We went up 10 CS and didn't do fuck all.
So I was not a huge fan of the Azir support, but I do still think it's kind of getting scapegoated here. Because I mentioned earlier how like that 1v1 between Tenacity and Fudge kind of swung the game. As soon as Fudge got that kill, he got the tempo and they were able to take Herald and he was able to get more plates. And then they used the Herald to take out the rest of the turret. So to me, that's where the game kind of got lost, even though like you could definitely blame the Azir later on. During lane, it was fine. They got a lead. The problem that I have with the Azir pick is that it's not like an enchanter where your AD carry feels a lot more safe because he's got sustain or he's got shields or whatever. It's not like that. And so you need that Azir. The only tool that the Azir has after laning phase is maybe you get the Rylai's slow. I saw you built Rylai's.
Yeah, or
Or
killing
just
yourself for the shuffle.
exactly, and that's it. You have the shuffle, but he had no stopwatch and no Zonias. So, like, because you don't really have that good of an income of gold income as a support, you're not really going to get that stopwatch or Zonias for a while. And so that's where I don't like the pick. I understand why it's good for lane, and I realize right now there's a lot of the meta is to win bot lane. It just seems like everyone's doing whatever they can,
Yeah.
but I don't think you can risk the rest of your game that much just to get the push, for example, in lane. Like I don't think the sacrifice they made is worth it, and that's why I don't like the Azir pick.
Yeah, I guess I somewhat agree with you there because I think I don't necessarily think that Azir support was the sole reason why they lost that game. The problem
Hmm.
is not necessarily even when shit hit the fan, just when their comp didn't do, exactly what it was supposed to do, which is win the game through bot lane. Yes, they had a bot lane advantage that netted them the first dragon. Honestly, should have netted them the first Rift Herald as well. It was really criminal that Cloud9 just literally hashtag heisted the Rift Herald 4v5. Like, I have no idea how that happens, and nobody on Cloud9 is dying for it. Admittedly, really good Cyclone by Blabber on the pullout to just not die because 100
Yeah,
Thieves through like the Jax jumped on him. I think the Azir dashed on him, and I think Closer was like in the midst of getting ready to go, and he basically just cycloned at the exact time that everybody used all their jumping abilities to cancel them. So I guess credit to Blabber on that. But the fact that they won bot lane. I mean, they still won bot lane if you go back and watch the lane, but they only got the one drag off it, didn't get the Rift Herald, and then they just seemed to have no plan afterwards. That was the biggest problem for me is it didn't go exactly the way you wanted it to go. So how do we deviate? What do we do next? And 100 Thieves didn't do anything.
and I think that escape play that you're talking about with Herald, where Blabber uses the Wukong ulti to escape, that to me, when they were walking down that choke towards blue buff, was maybe the one scenario where I thought the Azir could have shuffled over the wall over blue buff wall to
He might
make
have
the
only been
sweep.
level 5, though, to be honest.
Oh, that's possible. I think he was 6, but you could be right. I might be wrong about that. But regardless, to me, that would have been the only situation the whole game where I thought maybe he could go for the ulti. There was no other scenario where he had the opportunity, I guess is what I'm saying, throughout the rest of the game. So maybe he was level 5 and that was not a you could look that up and let me know. Maybe there was no opportunity there, but it definitely felt like there was no opportunity after that, which also made the Azir look even more useless. Um, so yeah, and then I guess when it comes to like mid, I didn't really. There was nothing that really stood out with Bjergsen, honestly, from this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only interesting thing
He
with
was
that
there.
game from the mid lane was, I mean, I think a lot of people. I mean, I guess I don't even know. But to me, it seems like Silas versus Akali is a skill matchup, and Yerksen lost a skill matchup to Diplex, a rookie player playing his first game in the LCS, and that's not
Did he
necessarily.
lose it though?
Well,
Like, was he behind?
he was down CS, so I
Hmm.
mean,
I didn't think he was, but to be honest, I didn't really keep that much
I didn't
track
think
of
he
it.
was playing bad or anything, but considering that you're in a skill matchup versus like you're the most tenured player in the league right now, and you're against a rookie, and I don't know, because
No, I think that's fair. Honestly, I think that's fair
maybe my
criticism.
thoughts are just a bit skewed because I'm thinking of like Jensen versus Bjergsen first game, where Jensen was like obviously extremely nervous and playing like dog shit, and Bjergsen was shitting on him, but he was playing
You're
like
thinking of
AP
the AP
Kog'Maw.
cog?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
that's
maybe
fine. I
that's
remember that
just
too.
stuck in my head, and I'm thinking like, yeah, this is what the best mid laner versus a rookie player is supposed to look like, and it didn't look like that. But I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, that I don't even know what to say about 100 Thieves. They played like dog shit against Cloud9, where they did some weird thing that didn't work. I'm not gonna like ruin them for it. And then they played Immortals. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, right? There, I guess two things about Doublelift here. The Cloud9 game, I got to give credit to Berserker for landing the Ash arrows. The one, so I actually, I watched Doublelift came out with a video like going over. He was watching Medios' co-stream and he was going over the games, and he confirmed what I had. I did my research and he confirmed this, that the one Ash arrow that he gets comboed first, he gets Ash arrowed into Wukong ult. His flash was up in 1 second, and I'm like, because I was rewatching the VOD, I'm looking at the Ash arrow cooldown, I'm looking at his flash. It was 1 second, and he confirmed it on his stream. So that I kind of felt bad for, like bummer. But he also said, and the other point that I was going to bring up is that he should have brought cleanse, and that was something that I was saying to Andrew when he and I were watching the games together. I was saying I think he probably regrets not taking the cleanse, and sure enough, that cost him. The other thing in the Immortals game is he just took over tactical, decided to sit under tower as Immortals went to Rift Herald. Doublelift and Busio called for the dive, and they just dove him and killed him, traded 1-for-1, but then Doublelift continued to take plates and then take over the game. So I guess you could give him a little bit of criticism for kind of losing the game against C9, kind of, sort of, and then you can give him credit for beating IMT, although he himself would tell you that they better freaking smash IMT, right?
yeah. And just to correct myself, Busio was 7 at that Rift Herald fight.
Okay, I thought
I was
I
thinking of
he
the
was able to
I
ult.
was thinking of the first Rift Herald, which he was level 5 for, but
Mm.
it was the second one.
And when you were rewatching it, could you see if he was in range to go for the scoop?
No, all I literally did was find and just I did
Mm.
not.
I think he was, but I could be wrong.
Well,
Regardless, it didn't seem like
if
there was any opportunities
I
later
didn't
to.
see when I was rewatching the video, but if I remembered correctly, he was trying to, but just got disrupted by the cyclone. But maybe I'm
Mm.
not remembering correctly. But there was 2 people going on him. One of them was the Jax, 100%. I'm pretty sure the other one was Azir, but maybe it was closer. But either way, it
Okay.
did seem like 100T was trying to force that engage, but Blabber just had a really nice cyclone to stop it.
Okay. And let's go to the O2 teams now, unless you have anything more on these two.
Yeah, I mean, similar to I mean, not similar to, but for Tenacity, I guess I'm not really putting a lot of stock into his week 1 performance. I mean, he lost a skill matchup in top lane, and he was playing Ornn versus Renekton, where I think we've seen that matchup play out like a billion times, where nothing is even going to happen anyway. So
He played the Renekton, right?
yeah, he played Renekton. I mean, he got a
Yeah, and I think he had a
he got
little
a,
bit of a lead.
he got a CS lead. It's supposed to happen, but
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, let's start with the O2 squads.
yeah,
One of
just
these teams doesn't belong with the other teams.
yeah. One is an imposter here. Team Liquid, they're O2. Kind of an unfortunate O2 considering the fact that they played TSM and everyone expects TSM to be a bad team and everyone expects Team Liquid to be a good team. So,
Should we give some cope to the TL fans? I could give some cope a little bit.
sure.
I think their macro plays were fine. I think some of the biggest issues were just some lack of communication, which I wasn't expecting considering they all speak Korean. We kind of learned that even when you all speak the same language, you could still have lack of communication or issues with communication, because there was the game against FlyQuest where Harry uses his Syndra combo before the Vi ultimate, which really makes no sense. It's the freest combo. Let Vi hit R. It's point and click. She's not going to miss Vi ultimate. It can't happen. And then you follow up with the scatter. So they missed that, and because they missed that combo, it was turned back on them, and Spica ended up getting first blood. So that was like just a little bit of a miscommunication on how to chain CC. And similar to that in the bot lane against TSM, I think they should absolutely snowball the game when Pyosik lands the Sejuani ult onto someone I don't remember, and Core JJ is a little too slow to follow up with the bubble. Um, there's a couple things that could have happened there. Either Core was waiting for Harry to roam and he wasn't ready for the full dive yet, or maybe his bubble was still on cooldown and it wasn't ready. But like the point is that should be a pretty free CC chain, and they weren't able to chain the CC there. And so those two plays are where I just kind of came up with this conclusion that like they're just a little bit lacking on um some synergy, if you will.
Yeah, I mean,
But for the most part, their macro plays were fine, so I don't look at them as the same as Dig, Golden Guardians, or Immortals.
yeah, I mean, it's everyone's really pointing to their performance against TSM as one of the reasons why people are like, oh, TSM, it's like they or sorry, TL is this team's not going to be very good, or it's people are like, oh, I told you so, TL's not going to be good. It's like yeah, there's not really a ton to take away from their game against FlyQuest in terms of anything good or bad, really. I think they just kind of played the scaling versus scaling game, and you know, I think we talked about it a little bit before, but you just got to credit the carries of FlyQuest of just being more useful and effective over the TL carries, and I thought that was part of the reason why they mainly won that game. So I don't really have to fault too much in the grand scheme of things with Team Liquid on their game against FlyQuest, but the game against TSM, I think, is scary for a couple of reasons. One, we sort of already talked about it just now, and even in the TSM segment. Team Liquid should be able to snowball that game through bot lane. And the fact
Mhm.
that they, one, weren't, two, didn't really make attempts to do that by, not taking early dragons, although in that game, TL seems to be, to me, that team that is going to go for the 2 Rift Heralds over the first 2 dragons. But I think that when you are picking a bot lane with a lot of, priority, it is just always very important to find those timings where you can get those early dragons, because it's basically just like free win condition.
Yeah.
Regardless of whatever the hell team comp you're playing, stacking dragons is just a free win condition 99% of the time. So, just the fact that they couldn't snowball the game or didn't snowball the game or just didn't feel the need to. One, that's a problem. Two, Summit's performance in that second game against TSM is part of the reason why he got dumped off of Cloud9 and did not have a team going into, early or sort of mid 2022. And, he sort of came back later in the year with FPX and was a substitute top for them for a little while. But was literally copy paste Summit gameplay of what we saw in this game right here to
Was
what we
it though?
saw. It was literally the exact. I'm not saying to like early Summit, like early scene on Summit, but like struggling Summit. This was exactly what we saw. We saw, hey, this guy's gonna pick Gnar or aggressive top lane champion. Hey, we're gonna pick AFK tank, do nothing. Hey, we're gonna send our jungler to protect our top laner when waves are getting stacked up. And when we find proper gank timings, oh, guess what? TSM did that the entire game. Boogie was hovering topside when waves were getting stacked on him, and they found those timings when Viewership was showing on the opposite side of the map. They can go up and pressure Summit. So I don't know. To me, it just was a very big problem that this looked like an exact copy paste Summit gameplay game from end of spring 2022.
So I would be lying if I said that I didn't think of the connection of, oh, this is kind of the issues that he had with Cloud9. But the reason why I fall on it's not exactly copy paste is because I remember him getting ganked a lot and really screwing the pooch in lane. But in all fairness, in lane he was up like 30 CS and had plates and stuff like that. It wasn't until after the laning phase to me that he started running it down in this game. So that's why I thought it was a little bit different. Am I getting some of that wrong, you
I
think?
mean, I'd have to remember, but I don't remember a point where he was up 30 CS, but maybe, I don't know. But
I got in my notes here 30 CSD by 14 minutes, so you can go around 14 minutes and you'll probably see it somewhere around there. Maybe it was like 29 CS, I don't know, but
fair enough.
just yeah.
That's okay.
And then 3 plates.
Yeah,
So
three
like
three plates is obviously important for sure.
things are going well in lane. That's my takeaway. It wasn't until after. Now, mind you, he did have the outplay against Maple, which was a pretty big play. Just that's not enough to make up for dying. Well, quite often. How many useless, like meaningless deaths did he have?
Like
Quite a bit, right?
3 or 4.
Yeah, and so I, the comparison to the Cloud9 is that he was running it down. To me, it was just a little bit different at which point in the game he started running it down, and so that's why I didn't think it was a complete copy and paste. But there are some parallels to draw, and I could totally see why some Team Liquid fans are kind of monka. But I would say to those Team Liquid fans, relax. They still had some really nice macro plays. There's just some small little things that I think can get ironed out pretty quickly, and I don't expect this team to continue to struggle. But I've been wrong before. I have been wrong before.
Yeah, I think TL is going to be all right. I think, for me, the most important thing is, Summit in the top lane just to see something different. Um, that's mainly it. I know I didn't necessarily have the expectation that Team Liquid was just going to come in and start stomping the league. I did think that some of the older more, familiar teams that have, same players as previous years, like the EGs, like the C9s, were going to be on top of the league to begin. And then I also did expect, you got these teams that have a lot of individual talent, but not necessarily have been playing together for a long time. Your Team Liquid, FlyQuest, your 100 Thieves to sort of pick up their momentum to the mid and end parts of the split. But, TL fans, it's going to be all right. You guys will be okay. As long as we see some good things at a summit that aren't just 1v9ing a lane phase, then we'll be good.
One last thing I have on TL that I thought was risky but still interesting. Do you remember the one play where I think it was Piosik and Harry continue to push back TSM? Like TSM was like kind of running away from them forever, and TL kind of postured like they were going to re-engage on them. This was in the top lane. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
No, I'm trying to think though, but
Basically TSM was kind of disengaging a fight. They had already gotten one pick, and TL kind of made it look like they were going to re-engage, but all they were doing was stopping the TSM bases. And the reason why I liked it, first of all, it's risky because if TSM would have started a fight, I think TL loses it. But all they were doing was stopping the bases, and it allowed Summit to TP in and grab an extra tower. That to me was just a really smart macro play that like I don't think most teams do. But I have to admit that it's risky because they're kind of like chunked out, but they're still chasing TSM with TL having lower-ish health bars, so it was a little bit risky, but an interesting macro play nonetheless that stood out to me, and I think in the most part, it's a good thing. Anyways, just a play that I wanted to highlight, but I should have time stamped it so that people could know what the hell I'm talking about.
mhm.
Anyways, that's it for them. What, Dig?
Yeah,
Should we
we
go
got
Dig?
Dignitas. I did mention it a little bit earlier. They're not playing with their full roster. They did have Biofrost. I don't even is he their academy or an NACL support, or is
I
he
don't
just
know.
filling in for?
He was signed already. I know that he was signed because I remember seeing it a little while back. I don't know if he was supposed to be academy or not, but I know that he was signed. I just forgot to bring it up when we did our last episode like 2 weeks ago or whatever. So I
Yeah,
know it wasn't like a complete last second thing. Um, anyways, I couldn't tell you when he signed.
I just wanted to look
Regardless,
up
the
really
bot
quickly,
lane looked
but
like trash though.
yeah, they look
Um,
like shit.
I'm a little bit worried for the bot lane. And you mentioned how like we don't know how long they've been practicing together. I remember Dom tweeting out that Armut was in Europe like a week before the season started. So like definitely some issues there, but I'm still really concerned with how hard their bot lane was getting clapped.
Yeah. So,
It
interestingly enough, sorry, Bifrost is not listed on their Dig Challengers team, which is basically their academy team. Diamond is
mhm,
support for that.
mhm.
So I honestly wonder if Biofrost literally just got the call late to just fill in because he either is still probably under contract with Dig and just isn't on a team, or just has familiarity with the team. So I'm not exactly sure, but the fact that he's not listed as a starter on their LCS team or on their Academy/Challenger League team probably it leads me to believe that he was probably just emergency filling in. Um, but I guess to get back to more of the broader scope of Dignitas, I wasn't expecting this team to do well at all whatsoever. Especially after the fact that Dig released some video. I don't know. I saw it was. I just remember seeing the video. I don't remember what the video title was. I don't even remember what the hell the video was. But Jensen was giving like a little mini interview in this video, and he said that 1 week out into LCS, Armut hadn't arrived, and they literally had not practiced together at all as a team.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I think with that information and with the performance that we saw this past weekend, I think that Dignitas is probably going to just be sandbagging Spring Split. Not because they're terrible, just because they probably won't be able to pick up the pieces in time to be a good team come playoffs. So, this might just be a
They
team
had
that we throw on the back burner for a couple weeks here.
Yeah, it felt like there was just no ability to recover from how hard their bot lane was getting crapped on. Like the problem with it is like their bot lane's getting smashed, so like that completely takes away one of the areas that Santorin can go, right? So if you're jungling from that point of view, like that lane is just dead. You can't save it. They're just getting hard stomped. And so the other team kind of knows like Santorin can either play around mid or he could go top, and it kind of felt like you saw him go top over and over and over again. And I think that's one of the reasons why CLG was able to set up that bait so well, was because it felt like they knew, hey, Santorin's going to come up here, man. There's no way he's going bot right now. Their bot lane is just, they're giving up on that. And so that's one issue, but the other thing that I will give them some credit on is they team fought pretty well in the game against FlyQuest. They did have the Rift Herald fight where they won that fight. To me, that was a good macro play where they did their rotation, they got there in time, they took the fight, Jensen got a couple of kills, so it wasn't all bad. It just felt like the gap in the bot lane was too big for them to overcome. And so
Yeah.
that was the biggest issue. And I think it was in both games, if my memory serves, that their bot lane was getting
It
stomped.
was, and I think that was sort of something that I referenced in our last episode where we were talking about, giving our sort of our pre-split rankings. My main concern for Dig and one of the reasons why I had them seventh, below even CLG and the rest of the other teams, because this is a team that, on paper, could be a upper bracket team. I don't mean upper bracket like upper bracket playoffs, but just upper bracket of the standings. But
Mm.
it just doesn't look like that is going to happen, and I think a lot of that will have to do with their bot lane, even though they will get Ignar back at some point. I don't think there has really been any indication when he might be able to get to NA,
Mhm.
but I just think their bot lane is just unfortunately not going to be good enough compared to the rest of the bot lanes. You saw them get destroyed by CLG's bot lane, and CLG doesn't have a
Yeah.
fantastic bot lane by any means
Not
compared
a
to the rest
bad
of.
bot
No,
lane,
but I'm
but
saying
yeah,
compared to the rest of the bot lanes they're also going to play. I mean, we saw what happened when
they played
FlyQuest
FlyQuest.
and they did
Yeah,
and they didn't even have their full bot lane. So
yeah.
the
But
sorry,
they did have the best player of the weekend, though, as per me.
yeah, it's true.
Anyway, no, I think it's a fair point though that like it's not just that they got crapped on by FlyQuest, they also got crapped on by CLG. So yeah, and then with the FlyQuest game, it was like pretty much just free dragon stacking, right? Because their bot lane was continuously getting stomped. That was another problem that they had to deal with is that they couldn't really contest drag by the time Soul came around.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
if you're ever gonna give an NA grade for a team, I say NA as in non-applicable, not North America. We can give that to Dignitas for the first couple weeks of this season. I'm sorry, Dignitas, but I am not even gonna pay attention to you for the next couple weeks.
Yeah. Does it is it okay, a little bit of a tangent here, but does it not feel like anytime there's a team dealing with visa issues that like there's almost all like we'll say like 80% of the time it's really detrimental to that player slash team? Like
Oh
didn't
yeah,
even Core JJ have issues last spring? Like Core JJ didn't have the greatest year last year. Is it in part at all? Am I just coping hard if I say that's because it took forever for the visa thing to come through?
I mean, probably, and a lot of that has to do with gelling with the team. Even Armut was there playing, but I think he got to NA like the Monday of the week they were supposed to play or
Yeah.
something. So, and in that video or in that Jensen clip that I'm referencing, where he basically said that Armut's not here and we have not even practiced as an entire team and we're 1 week out. Like, dude, no fucking way you're gonna be like any good to begin the season. Like,
Yeah.
if you were to tell me any team, if you were to tell me that, even Cloud9 when they're what Berserker and wasn't there for a while to begin the year, and they had King and Destiny playing for 3 weeks, and they were like 3-3, and their bot lane was fucking terrible. And we saw that in the rest of the team because kind of you mentioned it already, like you now just have one less lane to work off of almost the whole game if your bot's just going to be that bad. So
And it wasn't really until summer, like late summer, that C9 really turned it on. So that's an area you could point to
mhm.
as well. But I guess you could also just point to FlyQuest and say they're playing with Winsome right now, and there's no problem there. So
Yeah, but
I
I
don't
mean, again, not to flame FlyQuest, but they were literally just scaling. So
know.
and well,
Not
and
a
then
big fan of the
against Dig,
scaling, huh?
it's just not like I just can't give somebody like insane credit when they just scaled and won. I mean, I can give them credit because they did what they were supposed to do, scale and win. But
Yeah. I
considering
don't blame you
Fly's
for thinking that
competition,
way.
considering Fly's competition during that, especially, like I'm not like you. Sorry, Dignitas, you got your shit kicked in by Prince. Like, doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I don't necessarily blame you for thinking that way because I think what we see when it comes to international tournaments, we do see a lot of the time that like you're not able to just hang out and win later. So
You
fair
thinking about
enough.
Worlds already? Jesus, bro, the
I
season just
always think
started.
about worlds. That's what we care about. Like, let's be honest. Yes, North America gets shit on at every world, but the reason why we keep coming back every year is because we want that 1 year to come back. That 2018 where C9 made their run to semi. Like, and don't get me wrong. Like, spring finals and summer finals are great, but worlds is what it's all about, baby. If you ask me, like, do I want the teams to look really good in NA finals or do I want them to look good at worlds? I want them to look good at worlds. Done deal. So yeah, I am thinking about worlds.
All right, well, moving on to the two teams who definitely aren't
That
making
will be
worlds.
going to
That
Worlds.
definitely aren't making worlds. I'll tell you that right damn
No
now.
shot.
I
Okay, go
mean,
ahead.
start with Golden Guardians because maybe they're slightly less stinky than Immortals, but unfortunate visa situations for this team as well.
Yep.
Gory not in the lineup. Young, honestly, never even heard of him before this week. He stepped in. Honestly, I thought he did a half decent job. Like, if I had to pick right now, get the hell ablaze all of off Immortals, put Young on this team. Like, I don't care. I thought he laned pretty well in both
I thought he was getting
games.
stomped in lane. No, wasn't he like
Really?
really? He was behind in one of them. I don't remember which one.
I mean, that was
He
the
was
first
really
one.
behind in
That
one of
was the
them. Maybe
first
it
one
was
against
against
JoJo.
JoJo.
That was the first one against
Yeah.
JoJo. But I don't even think he was like that terrible considering the situation. And he did a good job with his lane state against Diplex. He had a little bit of an oopsie in that like mini mid lane dive they did where they just didn't finish the kill. But I don't know.
It
Golden
might not be.
Guardians, they're stinky, but I'm sorry. I don't have a lot to say about this team.
Yeah, it might not be fair to judge him based off of laning against JoJo because we know that that is
He's the
his
best
strength
laner
and
in the
one of our
league.
best. Yeah, one of our, if not the best, then one of our best
Mid laner.
laners. Yeah. So I think that's fair. Maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh, especially for someone that, like you said,
He's so
is sub.
young.
Aha.
Sorry. I had to do it.
Okay.
You better actually not be old as shit, though. I gotta look it up now.
But okay, I'll take this another angle too, because a couple of weeks ago I said that I expected to see good things out of Stixay, seeing as last year, despite being on a bad team, he looked pretty good. I did not think he looked good this past weekend. Stixay kind of got crapped on too. Maybe in both games, definitely in
Well,
the EG
definitely
one.
he did in the C9 game as well. So
Right, yes.
if
In the
we're
C9 one, he just walks up to Blabber, and Blabber's like, okay, like, who walks up to Blabber on Wukong? I don't like what AD carry does that. So I was a little bit disappointed in Stixay as well. And while it's just 1 week, I'm not ready to write him off just yet. I was expecting him to be uh, solid at the very least, and we didn't really see that either. Licorice, I don't have faith in Licorice. I'm
yep,
sorry.
don't worry. Let's give him counterpick again, and he'll do nothing with it. But you know that was in the EG
What else
game
is
where he
new?
got his Olaf counterpick into Jax and basically did nothing and literally had to force his team to come help him attempt to win the lane, even though he didn't win the lane. Ah, Jesus Christ! I'm sorry.
Okay, you know what else I'll
This
say?
is stinky.
Yeah, last thing on Golden Guardians because we want to move on to another team that we don't want to talk about. But anyway, the last thing I'll say is I thought that River looked okay on the Wukong, but him and Licorice got to work together. Like I don't think it should be that difficult. If the Wukong gets on the back line with an ulti, you should have an Olaf that should be able to follow up, hit your R button, and run at them. And that never happened at all. So, like, I'm wondering, are these guys not communicating? Like, hey, I'm gonna go in. Can you follow up? Like, Licorice should be like, should love having the Wukong. That seems like a really dangerous duo, Wukong and Olaf.
River's
If
gonna
they
be
both hit,
deserve save this year.
if they both hit ultis, they should be able to destroy someone on the back line, and they just never really even got close, honestly, even when EG was like throwing. So just another area where it's a little bit like, come on, man. But let's talk about the other team that we don't want to talk about.
Yep, we got Immortals up next. If I have to throw Immortals a singular bone, one singular bone, that is it. Revenge. Not
Really?
terrible.
Me too. Yeah.
Like,
Okay, we're on the same page again. Let's go.
if we want to talk about terrible, we can throw it down to a Blaze Olive and Tactical, but Revenge, you get a solid thumbs up from me.
No, 100%. And the thing is, we need to say that because we criticized a lot that sometimes he'll get the counter pick and do nothing with it. But in the Fiora game, he had the CS lead. He was getting plates, mind you. I don't think there's much more he really could have done. I
No,
don't think you can completely take over that game. I think he did just about as much as you can expect out of him in that scenario. So like a lot of times last year when he got the counter pick, he didn't do much with it. This week he did. So I'm 100% with you there. Got to give him props. I thought even Kenby in the game against TSM, he had the nice lane gank where he snuck into the brush. And then Fleshy got the ultimate with Pike, and they gave Draven the cash out, which, by the way, I didn't know that that interaction worked that way.
mm-hmm.
So, for those that don't know, if Pike uses his ultimate to kill someone, what's it called? Your cut or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, you get a cut, but
Draven could cash his Draven can cash his stacks out. So that was kind of cool. But that was a play to me that was just Kenby sneaking in the brush and working well with his bot lane, so that was good. Everything else was pretty shit though.
yep.
The Blaze Olive absolutely trolled. I don't even know how many times. The 100th Thieves game, he just walked right on top of the Victor W. Like I, I didn't know what to say about that. Uh, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I would say that if I had to pick one person, a Blaze Olive is definitely more the culprit than Tactical. I think
100%.
Blaze Olive was just doing a bunch of stupid shit, whereas Tactical was just kind of getting destroyed as a result of said stupid shit.
He was also getting
So
destroyed in lane
he
2, though.
was, he was, but I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Biggest inter of the week goes to a Blaze Olive, I think.
did
Maybe
he get a
JoJo?
single KP in any of the games? He was 0-5. Okay, he had 2 assists in his game
Oh, I
against
was
100
gonna
T.
say, don't
But he
tell
didn't.
me.
But he didn't for most of the game. That's just why I had to
Mm.
ask. I was like, okay, he must have got 2 assists. Was KDA was 0, 9, and 2. Quite
Who was a
epic.
bigger inter this week? Was it him or was it JoJo?
It was fucking a Blaze Olive. Well,
Yeah.
100%. That game against
Okay.
TSM was honestly painful to watch. That
I think it's
IMT versus,
close though.
I don't know, that shit was so painful to watch. It was like crazy.
Yeah. Anyways, so just so you know, so I've been messaging after both losses Immortals had. I messaged JNT 018, and just so you know, JNT, I am memeing, but I will say this is one of the teams that like, if there was ever a team to do it, this is one of them on the list. Like,
Yep.
if you know what, if we were doing the 90-50-10 predictions, I'd give them the 10% that they go winless.
Really.
But
I was gonna
here's the
say you
thing.
could go with the 50%. I'd be like, I'd be cool with that.
No, no, no. So I was looking actually. Here's a little interesting fun fact. I was looking at like the worst record of every team throughout the last like I don't know how many splits. Like I went all the way back to like when it was best of threes or whatever. And the last time there was a team that was worse than like 3 wins
It was Echo Fox,
was
Echo Fox, right?
no, because they went 1-17, but they like that was when it was best of threes and they had 8 wins and like 30
Okay.
something
Well, I bet it.
losses.
Okay. Yeah, I get
So
you.
the win percentage still added up to being nearly as good as like getting 3 wins in a
Was there
regular split.
anybody else that wasn't Coast? Because Coast also went 1-17.
Coast was the only one, and it was like 2014,
Oh
2015 or
yeah, it would have been
something.
more games
And
than
they
that.
were 1-17 or
Oh,
something.
never mind. When did they make 18 games? That might have been the start of
I
season.
don't know.
I don't remember because old
I'm
LCS used to have like 28 games in a split,
yeah.
and then 24, and then I think they landed on. So really,
Yeah.
the only ones that have been worse than that was Coast 1-17, and there was
And
Echo
no one
Fox, and then there was Echo Fox 1-17 if we want to call it like that, but that was
yeah,
best
but
of
their
three.
match record was like 8 wins and 30 something losses because it was best of threes that year. So yeah, point being, I don't think there's ever been a team to go 0-18. So you would have to be really freaking, and we've had some really freaking bad teams. So that's why I say it's still a long shot, despite the fact that I think Immortals is a pretty bad team.
I mean, I
And who knows?
definitely, I could if I had to put if I had to put if okay, let's say we put their over under at 2.5. Are you taking the over or the under?
That's a really good question.
I'd take the under. I think.
Cause yeah, if I had to guess how many wins they're gonna get this split, I think I would go with 2. But the thing is, like, there is a world, there is a world where they just get like 5 wins, even right, which is
How?
not
What 5
exactly
games are they gonna win?
dude. Even CLG got 5 wins that one split where they were so
Yeah,
bad.
but that was because Contracts was coin flipping everything. So like
Yeah.
sometimes the coin like it. Okay, but I think that's fair though. Like if IMT just starts coin flipping shit, then yeah, they're gonna have more than like. But if they just keep doing exactly what they're doing, they're not gonna win shit. They might
I'm
win 2
taking the
games.
under. The 2.5, I'm taking the under. You're taking the under
Yeah,
as
me
well?
too.
Okay. I'll give them 2 wins on the split.
There's your fucking bar,
But
Immortals. Good luck.
the thing is, people, if people are listening to this podcast for the first time, they probably think we're Immortals haters. Like, it would be great to see like Revenge, Olive, Tactical. It would be so great to see these guys have a resurgence. We would love that. Or Kenvi to finally pop off because I mean, honestly, I don't think Kenvi's been put in a good spot since he joined LCS. Last year's team was trash and
Yeah,
he's on another team. Like, I would love these guys to be thriving.
yeah.
I
If you
just don't
wanna,
see how it happens, man. I don't see that world.
you wanna, you wanna call me a hater, throw it back to all those early episodes of CFP where Insanity got the juice. Like, where's that
Yeah.
screenshot? I still have it. I'll bring it up right goddamn now. I
Yeah,
don't
bring
care.
up Insanity with the juice. That was
Wait,
pandemic, wasn't it?
I don't have it on here.
Because why else would he have had that juice?
Yeah, it was literally pandemic, but I don't have the picture on Streamlabs right now.
Okay, well, I mean, if you're just listening or whatever, just
No,
picture
I'm getting it right
Insanity
now.
with a big jug of orange juice. Well, there's listeners too that won't be able to see it anyways. It's
Uh,
Insanity with a massive jug of orange juice.
Here it
And
is, right here. I got it. I found it.
there it is.
A secret gem right here.
He
Is
got the juice. I would
Insanity
love to
got the
see
juice.
Insanity make it back to the LCS
Dude,
again.
that
That'd be
that was my bold prediction of the offseason. I was like, Insanity is going to be starting on Dignitas, but they got Jensen, so.
Hey man, the split is far from over. There plenty of mental boom to go. It's still January.
Yeah.
Lots of time for mental to boom and for players to be needed to fill in some spots. So
Mm.
okay, what are we doing next? Where are we here?
I guess we can move on to our game predictions.
Oh,
I
true.
think that probably makes the most sense right now.
Let's do predictions and then we close out with quick news.
Yeah. I'll have
Okay, let's do that.
to. We gotta keep the tally going now. I'm pulling up the predictions on screen as well as the games right now. There we go. 7-3 for myself, 6-4 for Blue Jay. The main difference there was I had picked. Who did I pick and who did you pick?
TSM.
Oh, I
I
picked
took
TSM
friggin'
and you
Immortals,
picked Immortals.
which I feel like such an idiot for.
Yeah, and I feel like, unfortunately, with the way that Immortals is going, it's going to be one of those CLG type splits where I just don't pick them the entire year because I have absolutely zero faith. So
Yeah, see, I didn't take Immortals because I thought they were good or anything like that. I just took them because I thought
because both
TSM was
teams were
just as
bad.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And I thought, oh, this is like the monkey fight,
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
Simpsons meme. And I thought, what the hell? Let's coin flip it. But clearly, TSM not that bad.
Well, first game Thursday, we got CLG versus C9. Pretty good game actually. I'm gonna roll with C9 on this one.
Me too. Me too.
FlyQuest versus Golden Guardians. Give me some FlyQuest.
Fly.
Dignitas versus 100 Thieves. I'll go 100 Thieves.
100 Thieves.
Unfortunately, I think all of our games are going to be the same on Thursday. IMT versus Team Liquid. I'm going Team Liquid.
Yep.
And EG versus TSM. I'm going to take EG.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
but I'll tell you right goddamn now, the prediction for this first Friday game is going to be different. I'm taking Cloud9. Jamie's taking FlyQuest.
Huh?
Yes, no?
Oh,
are you
for
taking
that game.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I'm taking FlyQuest. Yes.
I knew it. Next up, Dignitas Evil Geniuses. Evil Geniuses for me.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
I was wondering what the was about there.
My mind is
way,
all
this
over the
guy's
place
about
right
to
now.
pick big.
I need to focus. I am okay. Carry on.
TSM versus 100 Thieves. Kind of just
100 Thieves.
I'm just
Do
for,
it. Take TSM.
I'm gonna take him just for fun, purely for fun. No logic behind it whatsoever, just for fun.
Okay. Dude, can we remind people that that's the double lift versus TSM game?
Yeah, that's why I'm doing it, just for fun.
That
and
will be
Bjergsen,
so
sort of.
funny regardless. Yeah, true.
I mean, he did already play for TL and played against TSM, but
But still, the peak TSM was Bjergsen and double lift, so that makes it a little bit more interesting that they are reunited playing against TSM.
Honestly, you know what I wish? I would have wished that TSM completely shit the bed in week 1 and looked absolutely awful, so they subbed in their entire Challenger League squad, which has Hanser and Svenskeren on it, and then we got Hanser versus Svenskeren against Double and Bjergsen. That's the timeline I was looking for, but unfortunately it didn't happen.
Cool.
All right, next up, Team Liquid versus Golden Guardians. Team Liquid.
And then CLG over Immortals.
Of course, CLG, baby.
The only thing, so the reason why I was like brain AFK as you're going through the games was I was considering taking CLG over C9 in the first game.
Fair enough.
But I don't think I have the guts to do it. I can't pull the trigger, but that was one that I glossed over a little too quick because CLG did look good, but then I remembered Fudge Factor versus Dokla and went, oh yeah, don't do that, you idiot. So.
Right, we got a little bit of quick news to go through here. First up, there was some practice schedule changes apparently made to the LCS scrim schedule. I'll say this in air quotes, controversial split vote. This is according to Artemis, who's the former EG head coach, or I don't know, not the head coach, but he was on the coaching staff. I think he was
head coach, and then I think he was head of coaching or something, or maybe that was somebody else.
That was Kelsey Moser, was head of coaching staff.
No, she's head of coaching right now. Well, dude, EG have changed their coaching shit so much,
yeah,
I can't keep up, man. I can't keep up anymore.
He was on he was a prominent guy on the EG coaching staff, but he put out a series of videos on TikTok, and which ended up on Twitter, basically talking about this new practice schedule and how, one, it was in a controversial split vote, air quotes on that. And then, we've had a couple other pros talking about it. Double Lift said on stream just yesterday that he personally didn't like the new schedule, and I do think that has to do a lot with the schedule not necessarily being fully fleshed out and
Mhm.
people are just, against the change right now. So for the people that don't even know what the hell we're talking about, the LCS for the last, I want to say, like 3 years now, has been running a one block of scrim schedule where they play one block of 5 games. And that's been the
Right.
norm for many, many years now. However, the schedule that they're running now used to be the old schedule that they ran way back in OG LCS days, where they run two blocks of 3 games. And in some rare cases, I think teams like Cloud9 and TSM way back in the day, they always ran 3 blocks a day, because part of the reason why they probably were the best teams at the time, because they were practicing the most. But to get back to the change right now, seems to be a lot of contention in the industry when it comes to pros and coaches and whatnot, in terms of having more free time or less free time, or it's stupid to have breaks in between our scrim blocks where it feels like it's wasted time, and whatever, whatever. But I think inevitably, when you always change a schedule, it's always going to take a large chunk of time for people to adjust to it and to get used to it and find a better way or a more useful way to manage their time that they're not necessarily used to having, whatever, whatever. All in summary, I like that they changed the practice schedule purely because I think it's kind of bad if you were only going to scrim in a single day. You only played 5 games of scrims in a single day against the same team. And I know that
Yeah.
there's like scrim culture in the LCS where top teams scrim top teams, bottom teams scrim bottom teams. Sometimes, the top will face the bottom, whatever. But surely you're not getting the best practice if you're playing the same team for 5 games, not necessarily every day, but if you're scrimming with them, you're also probably scrimming with them other parts of the week as well.
So I agree. Now, here's the thing: you got to take my opinion here with a grain of salt because I'm going to reference back to when we were had our college team, and we would always scrim that one team from somewhere in Pennsylvania or whatever, and we would always scrim the same team. And the issues were like we never really got challenged in anything different. Like we got so good at beating that team that I think it was a detriment to us. Now, look, I realize the LCS very, very different from college scrims, but the point is, I think variety helps a lot, and so that's one of the things I like. But I want to reference to some of the points that Artemis brought up in his tweets slash TikToks or whatever. Um, he said that a lot of the 2 hour window. So basically, it started off as 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. 2 hour break, and then 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. would be the second block. And one of his criticisms in his first tweet was that there's too much laying on the couch and lazing around and just eating, and they're not really doing anything. And I would say if that's the case, I feel like that's really on the managers and coaches to make sure that they do get some good time out of that. He brought up something about food comas. I don't know about that,
Dude,
man. Like,
honestly, when he started going down that tangent of like c- circadian rhythm and shit like that, I was like, bro, it is not like that. Don't even try to begin. Like, it
no,
is
let's not
like that,
discount
but
that because maybe it could be. The point, I'm not saying all this just shit on Artemis. I would have really loved to bend his ear about this kind of thing. The one thing that he brought up that I thought was an interesting point, and I thought he made like I thought made a lot of sense was he said it wouldn't be such a terrible idea to go one day you do the old scrim block, and then the next day you change and do the two different scrim blocks. And I thought that was interesting because his point was that like changing things up makes it a little bit less stale, and I thought that would be an interesting idea, but I just don't know. I don't have enough experience with that to really know how I feel about it. But I thought that was probably one of his more interesting points, and yeah, I thought that he made a good point there. What do you think about that? If they were to do one day like this and the other day like that, do you think that makes things a little too complicated?
I don't know. I think it's probably whatever the teams feel that they're most comfortable with, and maybe doing both at the same time would give teams a better opportunity to say, like, oh, maybe this different system is actually better, and not just say, oh, this new system sucks because it's being forced upon us and it's not the old system. Because
Yeah.
if stuff just gets with anything, if stuff just gets randomly changed and you're just like, oh, what the fuck, I don't like this, it might not necessarily be because you don't like it, it's just because it's not what you're used to. And I
Yeah,
feel like I feel like there's a really gray area in the middle there. If people are saying that they don't like the new schedule, well, is it you don't like it because it's not what you're used to, or you don't like it because you don't like it? So I think that probably is something that's being a little bit overlooked. So I don't know.
yeah. In his second tweet, he did say something along the lines that like he thinks it's going to be gone in 2 weeks and that they're going to go back to the old one. In which my only criticism to that is like, did you really try long enough with the current
I
system?
agree 100%.
Like, I don't know if you can really say that it failed if you tried it for
I
It's
so
January 30th that or it was 29th. It's past midnight now, but January 29th is when we started recording this. Like we're not far into the season whatsoever.
so
I would say give it a shot.
sorry, you said second video. There was another video that he posted?
Yeah, he came out with two. There are two TikTok videos, but I saw him tweet them, so I saw them on
Oh,
Twitter.
I didn't see the
Um,
second one, but
well,
what
the second one said that they're now trying 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., then 1 hour break, and then 5 to
uh
8 p.m. is what they're
because
trying.
what I will say is what you just said, if that's correct, and what he said in the video, saying he thinks that they'll just change it in 2 weeks. That sounds
Hmm.
exactly what I was describing when I'm saying, are they just changing it? Are they going to change it back just because they don't like it, or did they actually try it? Like you just said, like is that really enough time to fully flesh it out and try it? But good to
Yeah.
know that they're at least adjusting to it to make it, a 1 hour break in the middle. The last thing that I'm going to say about this, it was something that they reference on the co-streams, but something that's kind of been common knowledge if you follow a lot of LCS, in terms of how teams operate, is the way that practice used to work, to my understanding. And that's when I say to my understanding, it's not because I don't know what the hell, like I have any inside info or whatever. It's just from listening to players talk on streams over the last decade of watching League. But the way that the old scrims used to work and the old practice was you would play all of your games, you would play all your scrim games, and then you would review either after that or the day after. But not too long ago, when they released this new, the new, Jesus, I'm saying like schedule so many times, the new schedule, which is the 5 block schedule. They apparently do review in between every single game. Like they'll play one of the
Mm.
5 games, then take a bunch of time after to review the whole game, play the game. Like to me, that just sounds like a horrible system. Like doing lengthy review right after you just played the series. And I know Medios has referenced this a bunch of times, on stream during the co-streams, talking about how when he was playing on C9, TSM was sort of the team at that time who always liked to do lengthy review in between their games. And Medio said there was so much wasted time in between scrim games because in this case, TSM was spending 30, 40, an hour, long reviewing the game afterwards. And I feel like if that is the norm, where you play a game of League, which can be anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes, and then you spend that amount of time or more reviewing the game, like there's just a bunch of wasted time in there. Like surely, like I'm
It's
sorry, but
Medios though, right? Like he will exaggerate for sure.
maybe. But I mean, I would say I was just talking about a specific instance where like TSM was the team to do that, and I don't know if
Hmm.
that's what's all this is because of that, but either way, to me, just in general, reviewing the games directly after you've played them and you then have to go scrim again, having some lengthy review doesn't feel like it's going to help your performance on that day. Like, I don't know. It
Yeah.
seems a bit
And
dumb. But
even though
maybe
there's
that's
some
just my
things,
uninformed opinion. I don't know.
yeah, and even though there was some things that Artemis said that I didn't necessarily agree with, I still think that's an opinion you have to uh, respect because he's been in those rooms in between scrims and he knows what it's like
Yeah.
for at the pro level. So like, definitely someone's opinion that I think definitely carries some weight. And the other thing that he brought up that I thought was interesting is that the LCSPA polled the players and nearly half of them said they were negatively impacted by it. Now, I can fully admit that LCS players, if they get their opportunity to complain, I think they will. But that doesn't mean you just ignore their complaints, right? You do need to hear them out, but at the same time, you need to balance what we were saying earlier is where like you really do need to give this a shot for more than a month or whatever. Like really give it a chance before you switch things up. So I think there's some balancing that needs to be done. I think the conversation should continue. I hope Artemis continues to tweet out his opinions on it and just some of the news that he hears and what he's hearing from some coaches and whatnot, because I don't know. I think it's just a good discussion that should continue. It should be ongoing, you know?
Mhm. All right. Next up, we got some champion skew stuff. We love a good old champion skew discussion on this podcast. On the NA side of things, no meme. If you haven't heard the news, Champions Queue has been shut down until February.
I don't care though. Like
Yeah, I don't
like
really care. There was
I
a bunch of people getting upset on Twitter and Reddit because the automatic tweets that come out from like the Champions Queue Twitter were saying like,
no
yeah,
games.
no game. It was like week 1, day 6, no games. Week 1, day 7, no games. Week 1, day 8, no games. And all the comments were just like, why the hell is somebody playing Champions Queue? But I think, just after that, they released some statement where they just, all of the pros were enjoying playing solo queue because the season literally just started like 2.5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So the pros are playing solo queue and they're also adapting to the new practice schedule and whatnot, which, in terms of the entire day ends up being more hours because I think what did you say they end at like 8 or 9 p.m. now as opposed to 6 or 7 p.m. something like that.
So technically, the scrim blocks would go 1 to 4 p.m., 1 hour break, then 5 to 8 p.m., which I'm sure after the 8 p.m., they would probably have some discussion about the games, and who knows how long that could go and
Yeah,
whatnot. So
but
the days could drag on a little long.
yeah. In summary, Champions Queue will reopen in NA probably somewhere middle of the LCS split, and expect pros to hop back on that once they're done, climbing back to Challenger on solo queue. Because on the flip side, across the pond, our EU friends they have Champions Queue now, and a lot of
Mhm.
the LEC pros are really outspoken about how much they wanted Champions Queue, and I think it's been out since Monday of this week. Monday would have been January the 23rd. And from what I can hear and what I've seen on streams, everyone likes it. I've just been watching Bo stream playing Champions Queue. That guy is cracked out of his mind.
Yeah, the thing is, when Champions Queue first got released in North America, wasn't it like really a big hit at like not for long, but at the very start, wasn't it a big hit as well?
Yeah, but I mean, sure, I guess maybe what you're alluding to is that it might have the same fate as it does in NA, where people lose a little bit of interest.
I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm saying let's wait and see, right?
Yeah,
That's what
no,
I'm saying
I
because
think so.
I do think there is a chance that European players are in love with it and it does keep going, no problem. And back to the reason why I said I don't care about NA pros playing it right now is for the same reason that you brought up about solo queue just being fresh right now. Like people want to start climbing. So I think that's okay. But I don't want to completely dismiss the fact that like it's been a struggle of getting players to play Champions Queue over the last like year that it's existed. So while I say I don't care now, I will care in a month.
Yeah, I would
Absolutely.
I would hope that Europe getting Champions Queue will motivate NA to use it again, or to get back to
Maybe.
using it. Well, because I mean, if for whatever reason, let's just say we'll hypothesize 1 year out, if NA goes to Worlds has a similar performance, if EU goes to Worlds has a similar performance, all of the memers and haters and people who like to talk shit on Twitter are all going to be like, NA no Champions Queue, EU play Champions Queue, they did well, or it's just some shit like that. So I
Yeah.
would just hope, for the sake of the region, for the sake of their own reputation, that the North American pros will use it.
I agree. I mean I can't force them to play myself. No one can. So but I agree. We just pray they do the right thing.
Already, last up, we got to end it on a sad note here, unfortunately. But
I'm irate.
yeah, Afro Moo, he retired from Pro LoL. He just put a
Okay,
video
so
out saying that he's retiring from playing Pro League. He did say that he'll keep streaming on Twitch and stuff, and that he will be playing some League, but he does feel like one of those players that is just, since he's been in the league so long, and it's just no surprise at all that one, he doesn't really want to play League anymore if he's not going to be doing it professionally, and two, he's like, yeah, I'm not really going to play this much anymore unless I want to play it on stream or something.
So I say I'm irate, but I should probably say I think I'm irate. What I mean is if he was planning on retiring anyways, then I'm not that mad. But if he genuinely wanted to play and no teams took him, then I'm rattled because I still think this guy has been one of the most underrated players for the last like 3 years or whatever. I don't know why teams do not want this guy.
He's
Like there's
been a top
probably at
5
least 3 or
support for the
yeah, there's
last
probably at
three,
least
four
3
years.
teams in the LCS right now that are automatically better in the short and long term with him. Um,
I agree.
so I don't know. Let me pull up the LCS teams and see where he would fit. Give me one
He
second.
could easily still be on FlyQuest playing with Prince. He could easily still be on that team.
Although they do all speak Korean, so maybe not, right? So
Well,
just in all fairness, as skill level, absolutely. So okay, let's go with he could play on Dignitas, right? I think he'd be better than Bio. No offense, Bio. TSM, although I don't mind TSM giving Chime a shot. Like obviously he's better
yeah,
than Chime. Immortals, uh, nothing against Fleshy, but he takes up an import slot. Aframu's probably better and doesn't. So just right off the bat, and then maybe even Golden Guardians. Maybe he's even better than Huhi, honestly. And he played with Stixay before. So
yeah,
just off the top of my head, there's those, and maybe there's some others that you can make an argument for. No need to go on much longer on this tangent, but all this to say that like
Rush Hour 2.0?
I cannot believe he is not in the LCS anymore, unless it's just he was done anyways and wanted to retire. If that was the case, though, I think that retirement video would have come out 2 months ago
I
or
agree.
three
I
or four.
agree, but and at the same time, like, why? I guess I would say if it was the case where he couldn't just get on a team, why not just wait until summer just to see if he wants to get picked up? But I would say that him putting out the video in the first place indicates that he actually does want to retire. I mean, if he couldn't find a team, obviously that's sad. But I think if he just couldn't find a team and still wanted to play, he wouldn't have put that video out. He would have just waited until summer, see if he could get on a team. Maybe if he had to retire.
I'm not in his head, so I don't know. It's heartbreaking if he wanted to still play because not only is he good enough, he's more than good enough, and he is the longest, whatever. He's been playing the longest in the LCS.
Longest
So
tenured player. For that
that's the
word.
term. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, that's it for this episode. Let's close it out. Thank you guys for coming back week to week. Our live schedule has been a little bit inconsistent, but we still been doing our episodes Sunday night. I think after football's done, like we'll probably wait till after the Super Bowl to record in 2 weeks or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
After that, should we say like 7 p.m. probably on Sunday nights or evenings?
Something like that. But I think definitely post Super Bowl we'll have a stricter start time here.
Yeah. So, anyways, sorry about the inconsistency on live streams, but they are still being released consistently on YouTube and Spotify and all that. They're going up like really, really early morning, like 4 a.m. our time, just so that like even European listeners can get their thing before Monday morning before they go to work. So, episodes are being released regularly, so no need to worry there. And yeah, thank you guys. Remember to hit the sub button, hit the like button, leave a comment, and we'll see you guys next week. This is episode 111 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. Adios.